Why howdy there, this is Alex, welcome to Boomstick Gaming and my guide for mastering the combat system in Gears Tactics, which, side note, Microsoft did provide my channel access to. Some of the tips I have in store for you in this will be showcasing the basics of battle, while also demonstrating the more advanced mechanics present in the game. I will try to bounce back and forth between those two as we go along, so this is hopefully useful for people already playing the game as well as those who have yet to start. Now suit up with your favorite bulky armor, because it's time to deep dive into the strategic combat of Gears Tactics. The Overwatch ability is a huge part of Gears Tactics on both sides of the battlefield, and there is much more to this mechanic than just its simple function to be able to lock down areas by anticipating movement. One of the first things to keep in mind when entering Overwatch is that waiting till the end of your turn with only one action point remaining is not always the best tactic. The more action points you have when you initiate Overwatch, the more times your unit can fire at the designated area, if you have enough ammo to do so. The little symbol to the right of the unit's action points will indicate how many charges of Overwatch they have activated. You can even increase this number after a unit has entered Overwatch by performing finisher moves on downed enemies, which is a topic we will be coming back to. Now you might ask yourself, if I can just try to flat out blow that Locust's beautiful face right off, why would I wait and enter Overwatch instead? Well, in certain situations like right here, our standard shot's accuracy doesn't have me too confident it'll actually hit, so instead, it's best to fire at this ticker when it's a little closer during its own turn, increasing our chances of nailing that important shot. You may not always want to extend your Overwatch cone to its maximum distance, and by strategically placing it a little closer here, we almost guarantee this will play out just how we want it to.
They're moving!
Of course, your enemies will be regularly overwatching areas as well, and since I have interrupts as a whole different section a little later, instead let me show off how you can turn their Overwatch against themselves. When you see enemies standing inside their own Overwatch without any difference in elevation, which actually happens quite often, you can strategically place a unit by lining them up directly in front of your victim by using that very helpful line of sight indicator and then simply walking straight into that Overwatch area to see what happens. This will not only trigger and cancel out the enemy's Overwatch, but if done correctly, you'll also get them to hit their own unit, making this an extra devious little trick. Another cool thing you can do with Overwatch is to trigger your own overwatching units during your turn instead of waiting till it's the enemy's. There are a few ways to do this, but for this example, the Vanguard's ability Intimidate is what I'll be using. This will cause enemies to leave their cover and move slightly, which can be used during your turn to activate your own overwatching units, leaving anyone with action points left still able to act then after.
Nice one.
Oh boy, the grenades in this game. First off, tip number 1, immediately take off those semi-useless stim grenades that don't really heal for all that much, and instead load up every single unit with frags, because they are probably the best weapon in the entire game. Frags are not only immensely powerful for just blowing stuff up and being able to close emergent holes, while also being placeable as little proximity mines, but they also have the added utility of staggering and cancelling out enemies in Overwatch as well. Grenades have unlimited uses, but do have a decently long cooldown, but keep an eye out for gear with the passive skill utility belt, which depending on the rarity, will reduce the cooldown of those glorious frags. Of course, I'm not going to end this by simply saying equip grenades and call that a gameplay tip, because allow me to now demonstrate how you can extend the range of these grenades. When throwing these, maybe you can not quite reach your target, but there just so happens to be some environmental objects nearby, well, you might be in luck. Bouncing grenades off of surfaces can redirect them, while also sometimes extending the range if placed correctly. Angled surfaces and walls tend to work the best for this, and play around with your camera angle when lining these up, since you will get entirely different trajectories from different perspectives. Overall, I never had a frag grenade let me down during the whole campaign, and I think these might have killed more grubs than the entire rest of my arsenal combined.
Throwing frag! Scratch one.
One of the most important mechanics in Gears Tactics, which really ties itself well to the mainline Gears of War games, is how it puts an emphasis on finishing off the opposition in style. If you down an enemy, wait, don't shoot them, simply move a character right next to them to initiate a finisher, which gives every single one of your other units a completely free extra action point for that turn. You can greatly extend the length of your turns by going for these, but something to keep in mind is preemptively putting your team into Overwatch a little too early. If you have someone already in Overwatch and then someone else performs a finisher, they will get an extra charge added to their Overwatch shot, but they will still be permanently locked into that position, even though the added action points they just gained might have you wishing you waited to move them into an even better position. For this reason, since finishers are so important in Gears Tactics, I would recommend getting in the habit of holding out on activating Overwatch until you are absolutely sure you will not be gaining any more action points.
Okay, clear these last ones out so we can do our recon. Support on hand.
Another primary element in Gears Tactics, I would say as important as the finisher moves, is interrupting and staggering enemies. You will be constantly trying to deal with the opposition locking down your characters with Overwatch, but there are some really reliable ways to deal with this effectively. First, everyone's pistol has disabling shot, and although you cannot get away with this yourself if you're already in the Overwatch area, any other character can use this skill to cancel the enemy out of Overwatch, freeing up your teammate to go about their business. This ability has a long cooldown to it, but it does have pretty consistent accuracy, so always try to go for this method first.
On standby.
There are a few other ways to break enemies out of Overwatch, like using grenades or the previously shown off Intimidate skill, but my personal favorite way to deal with obnoxious stalkers is to slap any weapon mod on your guns that has the passive skill Disrupt. This will slightly knock back enemies, which also interrupts their movement if you fire on them during their turn, or it cancels them entirely out of Overwatch, which is huge since this can all be done with your regular attacks now. Since this also stumbles them backwards, counting as movement, yep, that means you can also use this to trigger your own Overwatching characters during your turn with a simple standard shot. So this last one, I honestly didn't know where to put this since it's kinda random, but in the first half of the campaign, it's somewhat tricky to come by helmets for your main team. Or is it? Back at your home base in between missions, you'll be receiving in regular recruits that can be either accepted on your team or let to expire over time, whom usually are rocking some kind of decent helmet. Even if you don't plan to use them on your team, still recruit them, remove their helmets or anything else you want off them, and put that gear onto your main units. You're pretty much just stripping them for parts at this point, let's not call it robbery, but then you can simply kick them off your team if you don't plan to use them. Of course, if you're playing on the much higher difficulties, you'll likely need to covet those recruits a little more, but still, jump in there from time to time to see who might be leaving soon, to see if they have anything on them that can help power up your team. And with that, those are all the suggestions I had for you to perform a little better in Gears Tactics, or more importantly, hopefully allow you to have a little more fun. Let me know if you found any of this to be useful, and I always appreciate your feedback since I'm obviously making this for everyone except for me. Now, if you happen to enjoy my more informative approach to gaming coverage, consider subscribing to Boomstick Gaming for more, ringing that little bell icon if you already are, and you can also find me over on Twitter at BoomstickAlex. A special thanks to Microsoft for sending Gears Tactics over, since I ended up enjoying it far more than I was expecting. And lastly, an extra special thank you to these top tier YouTube members and patrons who really helped me make improvements to the channel for everyone watching. As always, this has been Alex from Boomstick Gaming, and thanks for watching.